Afternoon everyone, and welcome to this Graitec Advanced Steel webinar. I'll be showing you some advanced steel tips and tricks. Thanks for joining me. My name's Rob. I'm one of the advanced steel application engineers at Graitec, and I work within the structures team. If you do have any questions or you want to get in touch with us, my email address is rob.merriman@graitec.co.uk. On Twitter, I'm merrimanrobas, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So if you do have any questions about what's in this webinar, any other webinars you want to see, any advanced steel questions, then please get in touch with me. Just a little bit more about me before we get into this. So I've been with Graitec for 6 months, and before that I was a draftsman and I was using advanced steel for 8 years, working across 2 different subcontract drawing offices. And over that time I've worked on all manners of steelwork projects, from 250-ton structural projects to timber frame buildings, architectural projects including staircases, spiral staircases, balconies, balustrades and folded plates. So over the course of my professional career I've modelled quite a lot of different things in advanced steel. So if you do want any help or want to know best practices for modelling things or want some webinars, please just let me know. So I'm hoping today that everyone will take at least one thing from this webinar they didn't know before. Some of you may know a lot of it, but I'll just cover what I think are good tips and tricks and best practices. So I'll go through what we're going to cover today. So to begin with, we're going to look at creating your own template and doing things within it that you do pretty much on every model. So we'll just get the template set up so you don't have to put all of that information in straight away. On every job you do, it'll already be in there for you. A lot of you guys will get advanced architects and engineers layout. So I'm going to show you a couple of different modeling tips where we can just take the architect's lines, convert them straight to advanced steel beams and tidy them up from there, which is the trimming and extending beams. Then we'll look at putting joints on and using the joint copy features and the group features. We'll look at the staircase macro, how we can use the library to save entries, and then there's a couple of connections in the connection vault which help the stair macro. A tool that I used quite a lot when I was in industry was the copy with adjustment command, so we'll look at that feature. Then we'll look at different things we can put into the model to get better output from the GAs, the different camera types, how we can automatically get our CAD lines to show in the GAs, and then how we can customize the palettes that you use all the time, because there's plenty of options in there. I only used to use 4 or 5 drawing processes and 4 or 5 BOM templates. So I'll show you how we can customize those. What I think I'll do is over the course of the year, I'll do a few more of these tips and trips webinars. And as I get my list together, then we'll just do another one and we'll do 3 or 4 throughout the year. So we'll look at how we can get our template to do more for us. So in my templates, I've got the AS template, the AS template 2, and you'll notice in here I've got an AS template RM 2018. So we're going to create a new template. I'll call it 2018 version 1. So what you need to do is go to Open. Now the templates are buried deep in the program data, but if you click on Drawing Templates, it takes you straight to the folder buried deep within the C drive. And what we always advise everyone to do is, instead of just modifying the AS template, we'll take a copy of it. So we've always got the AS template to go back to. So I'll call that RM 2018 V1. And then we can open that. So now I'm in the template file. This isn't a drawing file, it's the template file. As you can see at the top there, it says DWT. So anything I change in here now will be used in my template. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set myself to a southwest isometric, and I'm going to go to a realistic view. Then something that I always end up putting in on every project is within the project data, the detailer on my machine is always going to be me, so I can put that information in there now. The other things that I always end up changing from the template file is I always used to run my NCs based on single part numbers, so I can change that. And then in my DXF settings, my clients always just wanted the DXF to be in 2000, AutoCAD 2000 format. So if I change that in my template file, every job that I run NCs on, I don't have to remember to change that. And you can obviously customize what shows in your NCs, all your NC project information. So just push OK on that, and that is now set within my template file. I'm also going to look at the numbering. I always run single part number for standalone part equals assembly number, and I always want my single part starting at 1 and my assemblies at 1, and I want my prefixes set by rules. So I can apply that and click cancel, and that will be set in every new drawing file I create using this template. All of that information will be set up. So it's just a couple of minutes, and a couple of minutes over hundreds of jobs will soon start mounting up with the amount of time you'll save. What we can also set in the templates is the cameras. So most of the time I will use similar cameras on every job. So I can set the cameras up in here. So I'll just set a foundation camera, a base plate camera. We'll call that anchor plant. Foundation. And the style I'm going to choose is stanchion layout, and I'll show you why I'm choosing that later. And I only want to show a meter up, half a meter up. I'll create a camera called base type 1, and I'll do base detail pick box, lock that at 1 to 10. We'll set it at a 750 cube, oh wrong dimension, 250 in the Z, and I'll make it 750 by 750 square. And then with cameras you can just copy them around the model, so I can copy that up, put my ortho on, copy it up 3 meters. I can change this to a floor plan, and I'll just change this to overview, and I'll change it to floor plan hot rolled all on half a meter above and below. So that now gives me my cameras that are set up in the model. What I'm now going to do is I'm also going to set some searches in this template file. So I always used to, as part of my checking procedure, run a search for objects that don't have a model roll and steel beams that were not the correct grade. So I can go to my selection tab, run a search filter, and I'm going to look for steel beams, compound welded beams, folded beams, gratings and tapered beams, and a material that is not S355JR. So that will search any beam that is not 355JR. So if I do save on that, I'll call it beam not S355JR. Just do OK, and then I can cancel out of that. The other one I'm going to search for is no model roll. So this one I'm going to put on, I'm just going to keep it with steel elements. I'm going to add special part, untick the material and go to naming, model roll none. And I'm going to save it as model roll equals none. So if you have searches that you're doing in every job, you can save them in your template file. If I look in the Project Explorer, I've got my 2 queries there. So I can save this template now, close it. And in my templates now, I have AS template RM 2018 version 1. When I go into that, I do need to do all visible for the cameras, but the camera's already there and set up. And if I go to the Project Explorer, I've got my 2 searches that we can do. So we'll move on to a few modeling tips and tricks. So the first one I said is looking at taking the architect or the engineer's layout, pasting it straight into your file, modeling straight over the top of it. So I have a real basic architect's plan. So to copy that into my model, I'm going to do copy base at 0, 0, 0, copy everything. Come into here, clipboard, and we'll just do paste at 0, 0, 0. So I have a load of lines where my architect wants his steel beams. I'll just save this. So webinar. So what I can do is I use my view cube to go to a top view. In the Objects tab, we have two commands. We have beam from line and beam from polyline. So I'm going to use beam from line, and I'll explain why. So it now wants me to select my lines and my arcs. So I just select all the architect's lines that he wants beams on. Then it asks, do you want to delete those objects, which is the lines that we've selected. So for this instance, I'm going to say yes, I do want you to delete them. And then it puts advanced steel beams on all of those. So I've got my beam set out top dead center. My grade is already set, and I'm going to call them beams. Now what you might notice is that I've deliberately in here left some of the beams long, and I've deliberately left some of them short. Now I always worked on the principle that I should always have my system lines noding out, so if I had to export this model to an engineer, they could import it into advanced design and everything would be noded out. So we don't have to take any measurements or do anything like that, or shorten or lengthen them. There's some tools in Advanced Steel we can use. So that's on the Advanced Steel tool palette. On the Tools tab, if we scroll down, there is Advanced Trim and Extend. Then it asks you what you would like to do. So do you want to trim, extend, or set it to auto? So I'm going to click auto. And now where do we want to trim or extend it to? So we can go to the system line, the center of the beam, the face, or to a line if we wanted. So I'm going to go to the system line. Then we need the boundary object. So this is what we want to extend or trim to. So I'm going to have to do this in a couple of operations. So those are my boundary objects. Now the member to be trimmed or extended are these ones. If I right click, that's finished. So that member got automatically trimmed, and this one got automatically extended. And it doesn't put any shortening on it, actually extends the beam and the system line of the beam. Whereas if you did a shorten through the features tab, it would leave the system line where it is and add extra material or take material off. So I can use that command again on here. I'll put this one to auto, system, the boundary beam is this one, that one there. Then I can repeat the command, auto to the system. So that's everything trimmed and extended now. So what we're going to look at now is the connections and what we can do with the connections and how we can get them around the model quickly. So I've got my favorites tab set up. So any connection you use all the time, if you hover over it, you get a little star to add it to the favorites, so they all come into the favorites tab. So I'm just going to use a straightforward single-sided end plate. So my main beam is that, and my connecting beam is that one. Now within here, it's automatically set up to auto notch, but the notching is not set up to have any radiuses in, so there's the option to add radiuses in there, so I'll do that. Another good tool within here is the erection tolerance, so that will give a gap from the back of the plate to the face of the web to allow for painting, galvanizing, a little bit of site tolerance. So I'm going to put a 1 mm gap on there. So if I wanted to get this around my model, I could use just a standard joint copy, but there is a joint copy multiple, and that will put it in. Let me just change those bolts are a bit big. Let me just change those bolts. 16s will be fine in there. So I can use joint copy multiple to copy that joint to multiple places. What it needs is it's asking for the beams corresponding to the source joint's input, one of two, so that's the main beam. So I'm going to choose these as my main beams, and then which are the secondary beams. And that's copied that joint to all those positions. What it has done though, is it has copied them to all those positions, but those joints are loose. They're not linked in any way. So if my engineer did come back and change the connection, I'd have to go and edit them all manually, or I will show you a tool a little bit later to do it all in one go. What the other tool that I have in the past found really useful, let me just delete those joints, is this one here, which is create joint in a joint group multiple. So what this does is it's the same as the joint copy multiple. So it's asking me for my source inputs 1 of 2. So I'm going to choose these 3 beams. And then it's asking me for all my secondary beams. That puts them, does exactly the same as the joint copy multiple. But if I double click on this, you'll see that all my options in here are grayed out. That's because this joint is a slave, and this joint in here will be the master. So if I edit the master, all the slaves update at the same time. So if we make it really obvious, we'll put a 50mm end plate on, and you'll see in there that all my end plates are now 50mm because they are part of the group. I do have tools, if a joint did change and it was no longer part of a group, you can remove them and you can add them. If you come back to a model after a week or so and you can't remember which is the master, you don't have to click on every joint to figure it out. You can just tick upgrade to master, and any joint within that group is now the master. So I can change that back to 10. There's a couple of little tips for getting joints around your model quickly and editing them quickly. The other tool I'm going to show you, I'm just going to open an existing drawing. If you've seen any of my other webinars or done the training with us, you'll recognize this model, which I've modified slightly. I have all my base plates on here. They're not a group, so I could make them a group, but I'm going to show you another tool to edit all the properties to match another joint. So I'm going to go into the joint properties. What I'd like to do in here is I'm going to make that a 20mm base plate, which it is. Now what would normally happen when you put that joint on is you put the plate thickness in and you can do column shortening by the plate thickness. If you wanted to add a pack and grout value in there, you can change it to value, and if I really exaggerate it, the column shortening is by the value that I enter. So if I wanted a 20mm base plate with 25mm of pack and grout, I would make my value 45mm, and that automatically gives me a 25mm gap in there for pack and grout. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make this 15. So I've got 30mm of pack and grout, and to make it really obvious, I'll just add 3 bolts in there at 250mm spacings, and there is an option to remove the center bolt because I've got a bolt in the middle of the web, so I can take that out and I've now just got a pattern of bolts around the outside. So if I want that, all of those properties to go to every other base plate, in extended modeling there is a tool called transfer properties. So this will transfer the properties of one joint to all the other joints you select. Now the order you need to select things in is the joints that you want to modify first. So that's all of these bases. And we do a right click to finish our selection, and then what properties do we want to copy around. So I click that base plate, and all the other base plates now have that information. So there's another tool for transferring joint properties around the model if they're not part of a group. So that stair shouldn't be in there, because the next tip I'm going to show you is the stairs and the railings. Sorry, just the stairs macro. We might cover the railing macro in another webinar. So the stair macro, the important thing with this macro is when you're setting it out, if you're doing it in 2D, you would start with the first nosing point, this position in here. The stair macro needs you to extend the nosing line down to your finished floor level. That is the start point for your staircase, not this point in here. So if we go back to our model, see I have a construction line here, which goes down to the finished floor level. So I select the macro. I want my stair to be set out by the start and end point, so I type 0. The first point for the stair, I will use the end point at the bottom, and then I'll use the end point at the top. You have to start at the bottom. You cannot start at the top and then go to the bottom. Then the input is asking me, do I want the stair to the left of the line, on the middle of the line, or to the right? So I will choose 2 to go to the right. And then I get my macro put in to the correct rise and going. So with this stair macro and any joint, you'll see that we have an option for a library. So it might take you 5 or 10 minutes to first set up the staircase parameters to how you want it. Once you have set that, you can push the import values button and it will add it to the library for you. So you see in here I've got RM stair 1, which is a PFC stringer with welded angle cleats and then folded treads. So if I click that, I don't have to set any of the parameters up. I can click my library entry and it updates automatically for you. So if you have 4 or 5 standard stair designs that you use, you can import them into your library and they will be in every model that you use. So it's a really good tool. Once we have that library entry in, if I had, say, a flight of fire escape stair such as this is where the stairs and railings macro combined with the joint copy feature comes in really handy. Because that is in as a joint, I have the joint box here, I can copy that joint. So I can very quickly get my stairs into the model. So if I do joint copy, select any part of the joint, you'll see it takes me back into the macro. So for this I'm just going to turn my endpoint overrides on. This time I want it to the left of the line, so I'll leave it at 0. It's taken me straight back into the macro, so I can pick my endpoints to the left of the line, pick my endpoints to the right of the line. So if you spend the time putting your construction lines in, using the stair macro and the joint copy feature, you can populate your entire model with staircases very quickly. And those are all separate joints now, so if I did have different landing configurations or different tread configurations on each flight, I can go in and change those. The other good thing with the stair macro is there are joints for it in the connection library. So if I open the connection vaults and go to the miscellaneous tab, you'll see the first 6 or 7 are all to do with the stair macro. So the first 2 are to put an anchor base plate or an angle on the bottom. Then we've got railing, so that will joint 2 different rails together. And then we've got different stair connections at the top and then different railing connections. So I'm going to use stair anchor base plate. So it's asking for a stringer. Then it'll ask, do you want a reference point? So I'm going to click yes. The reference point I'm going to choose is the nose point of my stair. It doesn't matter which side of the stringer we put it on. And then it puts a base plate on for me. So I can come into this and click create a vertical profile. And then the height layout at the moment is set to horizontal. If I choose reference point, my dimension now is from the nose of my stair. So if I want a 10mm overhang, I put -10 in, and that will drag my vertical PFC back. And because that is a joint, I can do a joint copy. And then it'll ask me for the stringer. Do I want a reference point? Yes. I can choose a reference point in here. and it puts it on for me. I'll just turn my endpoint snap override off. So there's a couple of tips and tricks with the staircase and the joint copy and the joints that are available within the connection library for the staircase. The last tip I'm going to show you within here is, some of you may use this, some of you may not, is this button in here, which is copy with adjustment. So if you look at my roof pitch, I've got two different angles. And my client, for example, wants a plate poking up here to support part of the gutter that isn't part of a cold roll system, so he just wants a plate in there. So the first little tip I'm going to show you is how to quickly get your UCS onto that beam. So if I go to the UCS tab, we have UCS at object. To use this, you need the whole object shown on the screen. So I click my rafter, and then I've got these lines coming out. Those lines are which direction you want your Z axis to point in. So I want my Z pointing up, and that puts my UCS straight on the beam at the correct angle for me. I'm just going to move it to the node point, and then I'm just going to move it back up 800, just so I can show you what will happen. And then I'm going to put a plate on there. So I'm going to use plate at center point, 0, 0, 0. Let's make it 130 wide, 200 long. Now I can use the positioning tab within plates to move my plate positioning so that the bottom of the plate is where I inserted the plate. I can add a weld in between these two. I'm going to set my UCS back to world. If I wanted now that same plate on this rafter, you would think that I would have to set my UCS out again, move it, create the plate again. But the copy with adjustment tool, if I select the plate and the weld, if you right click to finish your selection, it asks you for a reference element. So the reference element is my rafter. Now you'll see it says please select the target element. So the target element is this rafter, and it puts the plate square to that rafter. And if I did a distance from the node in there to the node point in there, I've got 790, so to the back of the plate it would be 800, so it matches on both sides. What you need to be careful of with this tool, because sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't work for you, and you'll be potentially wondering why. When the beams are created, you create your first click point is the end A of the beam, and the second click point is the end B of the beam. If they are the other way around when you create them, this copy with adjustment tool works from the end A of the beam. So on this one, the macro has created this for me, so it will create them in the same way. But if you've created beams manually, you might have accidentally created them back to front, and then the copy with adjustment will copy them back to front. But it will put the plate on at the correct UCS and to the correct setting out. That copy with adjustment will work for staircases. So as long as you can see the joint boxes, if we can't, we'll just bring the joint box up. So I'm going to copy this whole arrangement based on this beam in here, and I'd like to put it on that beam, and I'd like to put it on this beam at the back. If I finish the command, I'll give it a second, it will copy with adjustment around, and then we could move those staircases to the correct position. So those are the modelling tips and tricks I'm going to show you today. Like I've said at the beginning, I'll do another few of these throughout the year. So we're going to look at GAs now and how we can get better automatic output from a GA. So I've got my cameras in here. You'll notice that I have an advanced steel concrete slab modelled. So that's just in the objects tab. Under other objects, we have rectangular slab. And this will show top of concrete levels on my foundation plan. So by modelling a concrete slab, using the correct model rolls, using the correct drawing style and putting some levels on, we can get the GA to automatically show everything for me. So the first thing I've done is I've modelled a concrete slab. Next I need to put a level marker on the model. So if you've been given a site datum of 33.5 meters, you should not put your advanced steel model at 33.5 meters. You should always start your model at 0, 0, 0. There's a tool in here called level symbol. So if I put that in at my 0, 0, 0 point, I can change the global level. Let's make it 34.5 meters. And that will, if I go to a 2D wireframe, put a little marker in there at 34.5 meters. If I wanted to check that my mezzanine top of steel level was at the correct level, I just put another level marker in. It gives you an absolute level, which works off the global level we put in before, and then it gives you a relative level. So there's a couple more things we can put into the model. So I can put one in on my eaves just to check the eaves height. I can use a snap override of endpoint in here to check my column top of steel. And then we can keep putting more and more in the model. If I changed the global, those would all update as well. The other thing that I'm doing to set my foundation plan up is in every base detail, in the joint properties, I'm giving it a joint name of base type 1. This relates to a camera I have set up called base type 1, and I have the style base detail UCS, and I've set the scale, and I've set my camera view up. What I can do in here is the joint in here, I can call that base type 3, not 23. I think it looks like that. I copy that to the other one. If these were in a joint group, you would only have to do it in one and it would populate it throughout all of them. And I've got a couple of joints in here. These are going to be my base type 2. That one's already set up. We'll just check that one. That's base type 2 as well. So because I have a camera set up for base type 1, I can just do a simple copy of the camera. And this one I want to go to the center of the plate. And that will go in there. And again to the center of the plate in there. That camera is a little bit big and I need to change it to type 3. So we'll do 250, 250 and 500, 500. We'll make that 150. And I'll change this one to base type 2. You will also note that the type of camera I have as anchor plan. So all of my base type cameras are anchor plan, and my overall is a base type anchor plan. So why I'm doing that is you can have different camera types. Advanced Steel will run the same camera type from its drawing processes if you ask it to. So if I open my drawing styles, my drawing processes, sorry, you will see that under cameras, I have cameras all, that will just run any camera in the model. I have camera anchors, and I have camera overview, and I have camera selected. So what the anchors do is if I click that camera as A1 and I let it run, that searches all of the cameras for the type anchor plan. If it finds anchor plan, it will run them all at the same time. It will then ignore all the other cameras. So you can set up all your foundations and your bases to run as anchor plan, and they will all run together. Then you can do your floor plans, you could call them overviews, and they will all run together. So it's a way of manipulating how the cameras run. You can also just run selected A1. So if we have a look at that, so I don't have to go to the document manager to see my drawing. I can right click on any Advanced Steel object that I have a drawing for, and if I've run a drawing for it, it'll give me the option. So if I had run an assembly drawing for that column, it would say show assembly detail. So you don't always have to go into the document manager. So in here I can click show camera detail. And what that has done now is the one thing I didn't show you. When I set my camera up in my template file, I've run my foundation plan on stanchion layout pick box. Now what this type of style does is it will only show columns and base plates, so the model roles need to be correct. But what it does is it puts the column reference at 45 degrees. If you in your joint put a base type, it'll automatically run a label with base types. You can see I've got base type 3, base type 1. Because I've modeled an advanced steel slab and I've used a level symbol in the model, it automatically gives me a top of concrete level because it knows that that is a concrete slab. So I've done nothing to that drawing style. That's the out of the box drawing style. And then the base type drawing styles will give me all the dimensions, the section sizes, the base plate sizes, and the anchors that are used in there. So that just all links through from the model. So I've not changed anything in my system. This is an out of the box system. So that's what we can get out of the system. Now to know which camera we want to be running and what it'll show, from the list you guys know that there's a lot of different styles in there. If you click the drawing style palette and expand it, you have a little flyout here which will give you a description of what shows. So if I go to my GA 3Ds, you can see in here that it'll tell you if bolts and holes are shown, if they're shown as hidden or not, if they're labeled or not, and the description will give you what that style will run. If you're running cameras, you don't need to worry about selected or all or pick box. That's all controlled within the camera. But you can use the drawing process tool palette to see exactly what style will give you, because different styles will give you different things on drawings. So the last couple of things I'm going to show you is I'm going to open my mezzanine plan. The camera's not up to date, but that's okay. Any manual labeling or just sometimes automatic labeling, the labels will combine. And it's a question that comes through on support a fair amount of time. So I'm going to set something up in here and I'm going to try and explain why it does it. So if I just set a couple of things up and then I'll talk through it. So I'm choosing nose beam. Right, I'm just going to change my labels. They won't combine because they have different mark numbers on, but a lot of times you'll send a drawing out for approval. You won't have mark numbers yet, or you won't want your clients to get confused by mark numbers. So you will probably change it to just part name. So you end up with something like this. That label needs to go there. I'm going to leave the leader lines on just to show you what happens. I'll update this drawing. Now I will tell you that those two labels will combine and these two should, but these two here should stay separate. And that is because it's the distance that the arrowheads are from each other. If they're within a physical 30 millimeters on the drawing, they will combine. So these are all within 6. These two are not. So if I do update detail, we'll see what happens. So, okay, these two didn't combine. Oh, I didn't change that one. Let me just change that one to part name because they should combine. If I update it again, those two have combined and those two have combined. These two have not combined because the start point of the arrowhead is more than 30 millimeters apart. So that's the reasoning behind why they combine. The last little bit I'm going to show you from GAs is how to get I closed that model down. Let me go back and open that model. Sorry, it's already open. How to get the architect's CAD entries to show in your GAs automatically and scale with them automatically without you having to copy and paste them in as a block. So if we open Management Tools, we go to Defaults, and in the filter we search for CAD. We get two options. One is to allow the detailing of CAD entries inside the camera drawings, so I will tick that. The other option is Exploded Drawings, the AutoCAD version. So a lot of people we found over support have been, for example, working in AutoCAD 2018, but saving their file as an AutoCAD 2007 files, because when they explode their drawings, they want them to be exploded in the 2007 format. Your model should always be saved in the version that you're running. So if you're running 2018, you really should be saving it as an AutoCAD 2018 file. So if I wanted my explodes to go back to the 2007 version, I'll just load that into the management tools. It would be a little bit like buying a brand new car and putting a gearbox in it from 10 years ago. The car will still work, but you will probably encounter some problems down the line. So if I load those settings into my advanced deal, I don't need these two cameras, but I'm going to just move this one down 3 meters. And I'm just going to run this camera style, and I've got a couple more tips and tricks to show you, and then that will be the end of this particular webinar. So that style has run. So I right click, show camera detail. I now have a block of CAD entries linked to my camera, so I can delete that. Change everything within that block. That is a block within the drawing, but if I change my scale to 33 1/3, the CAD entries scale with it. So that's how we can get CAD entries to scale within a drawing without having to create blocks and copy and paste them in. Okay, so I'll just close these bits down. Don't need these open to show you the last couple of tips and tricks. What I'm going to show you now is drawing processes and BOM templates, these two. In the drawing processes, there's a lot of processes there, and in the BOM templates, there's a lot of lists. Now, I only ran 3 or 4 processes and 4 or 5 lists, so I'm going to show you how to remove these items so that they're not always in your way. I'm not deleting them from the system, but I'm just going to turn them off for now. So I need to close both palettes down. For the drawing processes, go to the Output tab. We need to go to the Drawing Process Manager. And all we're going to do in Advanced, you can do Advanced or User. I'm going to click, instead of expanding the folder, I'm just going to click on the heading. And then you just simply untick the ones you want. So I didn't run any multi, or I only ran single with a BOM. And it was either A1 or A3. And I'll just do parts just to show you, because my clients only wanted A3 or A4, but they wanted a BOM. So we do apply and close that. Now I have to reboot Advanced Deal for these items to show, so I'm going to do the BOM templates at the same time. Excuse me. So I'm going to open the BOM editor, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I click on the folder, and then I can choose what shows and what doesn't show. So I have my folder structure on the right hand side. So under the Advanced, well, this time I'll edit in the User. If I click on the Structured Lists folder, I just get a list of everything that's in there. So I didn't run an anchor and an assembly, bolt and anchor, loading list. Those are the only 4 I ran. I can just do OK. So to get those changes to take effect, you have to have, if you have the tool pallets open, those changes won't take effect. You need to make sure you shut the pallets down, shut your advanced steel down, and then we'll just come out of that, and then we'll rerun advanced steel. And that's the last tip and trick for this particular webinar. So while I'm just waiting for that to load and show you, does anyone have any questions? Or if you do have any questions, by all means get in touch with me on the information provided here. Finton, I can see you've asked a question. I think I'm just going to have a little play, so I will get back to you directly on your query. If anyone else does have any questions, then please get back in touch with me. But once my advanced steel is reloaded, I'll just show you those changes. It's Friday afternoon, it knows it's nearly time to go home. So we'll just wait for it to come back. There we go. I'll open my template V1 which we created. Then I'll open my drawing processes and my BOM templates, and you can see straight away in my drawing processes I've only got assemblies A1 single BOM and assemblies A3 single BOM. And if I go to parts, I've only got parts A3 and single BOM, parts A4 single BOM. On my BOM templates, I did it under the user section. So if I go to structured lists, it's filtered everything out apart from the 5 I run. So I don't have all 15 there when I'm only picking 2 or 3. So I can't see any more questions coming through. So like I said, Finton, I will answer your question directly. I'll just have to have a little play around and see what happens and test what you're asking. If anyone does have any questions, then please ask them now. Or like I said, you can contact me direct on my email at rob.merriman@graitec.co.uk, over LinkedIn or Twitter, or reply to marketing. We have had 6 webinars in the last 7 days relating to advanced steel. I appreciate you're all busy, so you can't attend all of them. If there's any on this list that you would like to see, all of them are recorded. So our marketing team can email you a link and you can watch it whenever is appropriate for you. So we had an advanced steel and plant 3D webinar. Last week I did one on advanced steel and the A360 drive. Jonathan Hand looked at how to live review one of your models. John Bennett this morning did an advanced steel basic setup to get you going. We've obviously just done the advanced steel tips and tricks. So if you want a recording of this to look back at, we can send it out to you. And then later on this afternoon, Johnny Hand again is looking at the power of Navisworks and how you can use it with advanced steel. So I don't see anyone else coming back with any more questions, so we'll end the presentation there. Thank you very much.